Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Mike.
You know, Dylan, we've talked a lot about the Sunburn Gaming Engine.
Yes, we have.
I don't know we've talked a whole lot about the Sunburn Gaming Engine community. I think we've touched on it.
I think we have.
But I don't think we've talked a whole lot about it. And John posted a great blog post of some new Sunburn updates and some community stuff happening. And they kind of go hand in hand. So Sunburn is now up to 2.0.18.f. For fucking awesome. I assume that's what that stands for.
I'm just not sure why you're mentioning the point release number in the ad.
Well, so you don't confuse it with previous 20XX
You just say there's an
releases.
update. The last time they did this, there was an update.
A number, anyway, so it's kind of the refresh point release after, going gold, something shake loose, as it gets out the wider, crown, all that. You got some performance tweaks, enhancements, small fixes. But, a lot of the updates revolve around community site enhancements. So on the site, you can actually, if you're a member of the site, you go and you sign up for the site, post in the forums and things like that, but you can kind of run your own blog on their site to talk about Sunburn. So, you can kind of post and share things. You can share projects and things like that. So what they've added to the site is for these community projects and things like that, they've added the abilities to filter based upon Sunburn version. So say your plugin needs the Pro version, or it needs 20.13 or greater, or something like that. You can now go in there and filter on these things and see the community projects and stuff that relate just to the version you're interested in or you're running, or at least see what the minimum requirements are. You can also deep link into searches and resource pages now. So if you find some really cool stuff, they've made it easy to take search result pages and all that, copy that URL, email it, blog it, tweet it, just make it easier to share as a community. They've put a lot of effort in their community site and do that. The refresh, the 2.0.18.f refresh, supports sharing and creating resources that target the framework and splash screen free editions, basically the enhanced pro editions. So you can make resources in there as well as tag it on the community site that support a specific version or build or type of the framework. Then there's some information about Sunburn's 2D rendering is supporting transparency sorting between multiple sprite containers. So you can add layer sprites to several containers and basically organize your sprite containers a little bit more logical to your game and not have to worry about some of the idiosyncrasies of rendering and that when you render the sprite containers in different orders. So that's kind of a nice little small update, small little refresh. And some exceptions for sprite rendering on Windows Phone were fixed, and an XNA memory leak, which the Z-Man, Andy Dunn, tracked down and found a workaround to. So, again, community themed here, working with and supporting the community. Andy doesn't work with Sunburn, or work at Sunburn. Andy works with Sunburn, uses Sunburn a lot, on there, posted some deep stuff, and it gets rolled up into the next update. So they have a great history of working with the community. It has really good community support. I have said on the past that I've gotten in the forums and asked questions about the engine in the marketing stages. I've also got on there and asked about a lot of 2D rendering and setting up 2D effects and a lot of specialized math that I was trying to do that really wasn't the Sunburn Gaming Engine. It was just I'm in a territory of mapping 3D to 2D mathematics, and I just don't quite understand the exact projection, equations that I need to use, so I'm kind of half there, but I don't have my equations right. This isn't Sunburn specific stuff. This could happen just in the XNA framework itself, but, even maintainers and John of the Sunburn framework himself, jumped in and answered my questions. I think this is even before we were pimping it on the site. Like, this is before we actually went in and did the ads. It was just like playing around with it a little bit and trying to figure out how 2D worked in their engine. So Sunburn has a great community and a lot of community support behind it. The team members are in the forums as well as other users of it, so your questions get answered. It's a really great, healthy forums, which is critical when you buy some software or you get a software product. It's critical to have this kind of community support that the guys over at Synapse enjoy and support, because that's just going to mean when you run into your stumbling blocks, when you have a question, it's going to get answered. Whether by the team or by someone else, it's going to get answered, and you're going to go on, you're going to be successful in getting your project shipped. So if you want to check out more and check out some of the community pages, you go learn more over at synapsegaming.com. All right, welcome to the show. Back this week. We've been out for a little bit. I got quite a bit of news to go through, but not a whole lot of different individual items. But we do have some big hit items I want to get to here in a moment. But later in the show, I'm going to discuss Kickstarter stats, Kickstarter in detail stats. All of this stuff that I discuss is posted on my blog and on GameMarx.com. So you can go reread this, review this, look at the charts, look at the actual data. But I have been, over the past several months, compiling data on Kickstarter projects, kind of in secret. I wasn't talking about it a lot.
Well, it was kind of a gray area.
It is. It is kind of a gray area when you build up a database that is not your own data. You're in kind of a legal gray area, and that is, just because you might have the right to do something, like it's publicly posted information and all I did was compile the publicly posted available information, that still doesn't mean they don't sue you or take action. But Kickstarter so far has shown they're not going to go after people that are taking and mashing up and remixing and analyzing their data. And this seems to really be the month in which analyzing Kickstarter data is starting to become vogue. And so I'm like, okay, now is the moment to go ahead and put out my own. Like, don't wait until everybody else kind of gets out there and comes to the same conclusions. Go ahead and jump out there, because I've already reached them. I've already done the analysis, and I've shared the numbers with some people locally. So it's like, go ahead and get out there and post our stuff. So I did that, and I want to break that down on the podcast. Just going to talk through that this episode. But I do have a lot of news to get to. And there was some pretty big items happen this week. And the week before that. And I think the largest one here, is Phil Fish and, Fez, developer, basically not going to patch Fez because of Microsoft charging $40,000 for a patch on Xbox Live Arcade. Now, let's get the whole story out there, okay? Because I really want to talk about Ben's article on Penny Arcade and why he's wrong. But before we get to that point, like,
are you talking about the article where he's talking about most of the content or most of the income comes from ads?
No. He has an article specifically on Phil Fish is wrong. Okay.
All right.
So let's go ahead. Let's outline how this works. When you have an Xbox Live Arcade title, apparently you get one free patch. The next patch costs you $40,000, apparently. I don't know if this varies per title, but that was the number quoted. There is precedence on a game company saying, we're not going to patch the Xbox version due to costs of the platform. This was said by Tim Schafer on Costume Quest. So this is not the first time this has happened. That's important to understand in the overall context here. But essentially what happened is Fez launched, and it had some bugs. Not a lot like showstoppers, but there were a lot of like little squirrely issues in some of the completionist type content.
Right.
Roll up this big thing, and they push out this big patch that addresses all these little issues. You know, kind of like, here's the post-patch that cleans it all up. And that patch introduced a
new bug.
That for 1% of the players, their save games would not open. Okay? So they lost their save games. They can start a new game and be fine, but they could not play their existing save games. So they immediately pulled the patch. Once the reports came in, they immediately pulled this patch and did a rollback. And they said, okay, we fixed it, we're going to push it back out. And Microsoft said, well, Phil, you've had your one freebie. Now it's time to pay $40,000. Now, Phil Fish is not really known for sane and rational discussion of things, right? Like, Phil Fish has a history. Even you see, like, kind of in Indie Game the movie, like, there's a big fallout between him and his founding partner.
I've not actually watched that yet.
Oh, you haven't
should
watched
watch
that
it.
yet?
No, I have
Every time he speaks, I lose any sympathy for him that I might have had.
Yes. It's hard to have sympathy for Phil Fish because he runs his mouth off and there's a little
worst times.
There's a little bit of like, you're a whining, complaining, difficult, but it was almost kind of that like stereotypical, I'm an artist.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I've read a lot about it. I cannot remember where I read the review, but one review was like, yeah, these are like the elites of the indie game community, and this is not really what,
like,
you know.
It's like okay, so Jonathan Blow, like, has his kind of persona.
He's just kind of weird.
And he's kind of come out and said, like, I will not work with Microsoft, and they're draconian and blah. But you kind of still give him respect of, like, he's fucking Jonathan Blow, and he does really different things in his mind, you know. He's like a Tim Burton of game design, right? And so you almost expect, like, yeah, Jonathan is just not going to be happy in the mainstream, okay?
Right.
He's never going to be happy with the mainstream. But Phil Fish comes off of, like, this drama, Smiler 2 calls it out, the drama queen, kind of like, did mommy not love you enough? Like, why are you making a little bit more out of this?
And there are a number of...
Why are you running to the blogs and the news sites blaming Microsoft for the patch, right? Which is what happened, right? So he goes out and he blogs, he posts, he gives quotes to all these sites of Microsoft and their extortion and all that. Now, Microsoft follows up, okay? So I do have articles here. I want to kind of get the facts out here, right? That they offered to help Polytron with patch fees. Now, they don't say what that meant. That could have meant, like, hey, we're going to knock off $5,000, and it's still $35,000.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of like, oh, fuck you. It could have been like, hey, we're going to drop it to 10 or 20 grand. And it's Phil Fish, who's like, fuck you, on principle, I'm not paying a dime, right? So we don't know the details. Microsoft didn't come out and say what they offered, but it was more than free. Phil Fish has come out and said some follow-up things in response to the drama of like, hey, everybody seems to think we got money from Microsoft for being exclusive. We're paying Microsoft to be on their platform. Okay, so Fez is exclusive to XBLA, but it sounds like Microsoft didn't chip in any money for that. It just sounds like Microsoft was like, okay, we'll let you come out on XBLA, but you gotta be exclusive. Because you're indie. We're gonna make you have to give up that concession. So he didn't get money for that. Polytron also has some investors. I forget the name of the company.
Has Fez not come out on PC?
No.
Okay,
No, it's XBLA only at the moment, and I don't know when it expires.
The
but
expiration is soon, and he's like, I'm glad the expiration date is going to come up on that soon, so I can push it out.
Well, it's going to very obviously follow the pattern of Super Meat Boy. Once that expires, it's going to be on Steam, and it's going to be in a Humble Bundle, and now I'm going to get it. That's when I'm going to buy Fez, when it pops up in the next Humble Bundle. So, I forget the name of the investor. I don't know if I have it on here, but so like Fez was in development for like 4 or 5 years, and Phil Fish also has like a publisher investor. It's not a Polytron published thing. It goes to this other, I keep wanting to think Trident, but it might be like Teledon or somebody with a T. So there's been some wrong assumptions made, I think, on the internet as well. So like, okay, so first of all, I don't think Fez was the runaway success critical acclaim makes it out to be.
Yeah.
I don't think it sold the number of copies. I think someone, I want to say I heard someone like 700,000. So it's not like millions of copies were sold of Fez.
It was a big deal for a while, but I think that's kind of
It was a big deal, but I think it was a critically acclaimed big deal.
Right.
One of these kind of like, hey, this is new, novel, but the mainstream gaming public didn't buy it as much as the critics loved it.
So basically, releasing an update, paying $40,000 to release an update could just be like, it doesn't get them any extra.
Yeah, so
it's
Microsoft is going to take a cut.
Yeah.
We've already talked about how Microsoft's ad rates are through the roof. So if there's any promotion of Fez on the dashboard, they pay through the nose on it. These investors are going to get back their money. Phil Fish spent 4 years developing this game, so he obviously has sunk costs into that. All of a sudden, if you sell 700,000 at $10 a pop, right, that money starts disappearing really fast. And you start looking at it and go like, okay, it's kind of like Thank You for Smoking, right? Have you seen Thank You for Smoking?
No.
Okay, so it's a kind of a mockumentary kind of thing on like the cigarette industry, where it's following this guy who basically went in and promoted smoking to all these companies and advised all these tobacco companies how to spin their PR and all that. And at some point, he kind of just explains the law of... I don't know if this is what Thank You for Smoking. Maybe this is Recalled or something. I forget where I saw this. There's a movie with this moment where it basically was like, look, it's this. A is the cost of the average settlement for a claim.
Sounds like Fight Club.
Maybe it was Fight Club.
Because he's talking about how he goes
maybe
around
this is Fight Club.
investigating.
B is like the number of claims you expect, right? And then so C is like what the cost of the recall is. And if A times B is less than C, you have no recall.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't make financial sense. So Fez is in that bit. Okay?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because Fez, he's basically, it's like 1% of the gamers who have already bought the game have this bug. There's no financial incentive for me to spend $40,000 and fix this. And again, I'm going to back up and say, Tim Schafer said the same thing on Costume Quest. There are game-breaking bugs in Costume Quest. They are edge cases that a low percentage of them may encounter, and it wasn't worth it. Tim Schafer came out and said a small studio like Double Fine cannot afford the cost of issuing this patch. We are sorry. We will issue the patch on the PC. Okay? Now, Tim Schafer does this much more diplomatically, and he's not a drama queen, and people love Tim Schafer, so it's kind of like a bad thing.
Yeah,
but where I want to get it out is Ben Kuchera's article goes off on Phil Fish as if this is his job, okay? So Ben's going off here in this article on, you've made all this money, it is your responsibility, your duty to fix this and make this right at any cost. And it's like, Ben has completely forgot that games are a business. Polytron has to make its next game now. Okay? It'll get Fez to the PC, maybe the PlayStation, okay? You'll port Fez to some other places, you'll get some reoccurring revenue. But right now, Fez is kinda done. Like, you've got your revenue off of Fez, you've got your chunk change off of Fez. He may still even be underwater. He may still be so behind on royalties and guaranteed payments that he hasn't started seeing checks himself yet, okay?
Yeah.
Or if he has, maybe he's seen a $40,000 check.
Maybe he's getting just above minimum wage now.
Yeah. So, who knows what it's like. Plus, he also has his settlement with his former partner, too. So who knows what cut of the shares are going to his former partner, right? So Fez...
Doesn't he have family issues, too?
No, that was the Super Meat Boy. Are you talking about,
okay.
like, the...
I thought he...
But also, it was left out of, like, the Super Meat Boy guys. Like, the community came together and paid for his operation and everything. Like, he wasn't as strapped for cash as they made him seem in Indie Game the Movie.
No, I mean, like, I think Fez, the dude, Fish, had to pop out because of visiting family in the hospital or something, but he didn't tell his partner beforehand, my family is having issues, I might pop in and out.
I think that was the Super Meat team. I think that was Team Meat. I don't think that was Phil. Because Phil was by himself. There was no Phil's big drama moment was like trying to get the contract signed before the Penny Arcade Expo. He never had a partner. Or he did have like a partner. You got like the new partner guy, and you had like one scene of him.
Mm-hmm. But I heard from other sources that the old partner was wronged at some point by Fish, and
now that wouldn't have been in the movie.
Yeah,
because they didn't do anything on the old partner in the movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, Ben is for somebody who covers games so much, because like Ben wrote for Ars Technica before he writes for Penny Arcade, right? It's insulting that he does not understand that this is a business, and that there's no way that this patch makes sense, and also not calling Microsoft on the bullshit of a $40,000 patch, because there is not $40,000 of cost associated with issuing a patch on XBLA.
Right. I would assume part of that has to do with some sort of certification process that
There's
Microsoft
be some certification
does.
process, and whether or not a patch gets a full round of certification is something I would like to hear answered. Of like, if you get your game certified, because like when you submit the certification, you do submit the game, but you also submit like all these video scenes and screenshots of all the content and stuff that could be questionable. So you're supposed to make it easy on the reviewers to just like see all the scenes that they need to see, let them play it if they want, and then go on. And so it sounds like in this case, like it would not be a big deal in certification of like, oh, that patch we just did, I gotta fix this one small bug that did save games, no content has changed. I somehow have a hard time believing the ESRB is like, nope, gotta go for the full process. And Microsoft's statements haven't backed up that. They've backed up we want to have a high quality, and this is our way of ensuring a high quality by making sure developers are serious about patching, and we do this by charging them $40,000. That has been the Microsoft line, which says, like, this is a bullshit charge that, in theory, makes developers make better games, but there's a fundamental misunderstanding of software because you cannot write perfect software.
Right.
Like, look at Microsoft. Microsoft does not have a perfect edition of Windows. How many fucking years have they been doing Windows and it still has bugs, right?
Yeah.
Software updates is just a natural thing.
Yeah. The difference, I think, is if they're claiming that $40,000 goes to basically funding a testing team that's going to go in there and QA or content testing.
And again, but if they're funding $40,000 for a testing team that didn't catch this game-breaking bug on saves,
then they have a serious. They're not doing their job.
Yay, call a mulligan. You didn't do your damn job, right?
I think the issue you run into though there is Microsoft has to do that quality because games on a console are a different thing than I'm sure Steam does some sort of QA, but it's less because Steam isn't
games on a console.
They want to
that were physically media based. Yes, you have a point. But these are games on the console, digitally distributed. It is nowhere different from a PC. Well, that has changed now.
What I mean is, for Microsoft, I wonder if it's a branding issue where, like
they want to have the Nintendo Gold Star.
Yeah, you don't want to be known for, oh yeah, that game may have issues on the PC with Steam.
What's worse? What's better and what's worse? Having this high barrier. That then you have games like Costume Quest and Fez where the developers say, we are not fixing these game-breaking bugs. I hope you're not one of the 1% that run into it.
Oh, well, no, I'm not saying that's better. I'm just saying it's different than, on Steam, you know that the games are separate from Steam. You know that Steam is just a distribution channel. It's not like, like identifying itself with it. And also it's PC, there's a bit of caveat emptor there, but it's, it's another case where, like, we need to see the understanding of consoles change in the next generation for this to go away.
This has also come out in several other ways, too, that I think Ben is really missing in his article, in that Valve has put out a ton of free content for Team Fortress 2 the Xbox did not get because they're not going to pay or go through cert for this content, right? That they're giving away. They're giving away this content. It makes no sense. For that, especially in Valve's situation, because it's like, you know what? If gamers go, well, fuck it, I'll just play TFT on the PC then, and get it to the Steam client, we win again. You know?
We win no matter what you do.
So, as much as Phil Fish is an asshole, and as much as he's a drama queen, he is right in this case. He probably should, for the sake of his fans...
Shut up.
do it in, like, the tactful way in which Tim Schafer did. But then again, Phil Fish, be fucking Phil Fish. Because at some point you'll be like Peter Molyneux of, like, that's what we expect from you. And if Peter Molyneux stops promising us crazy, insane motherfucking things, we no longer care about Peter Molyneux. We only want Peter Molyneux for the insane side of him. We do not want the normal Peter Molyneux, right? And like, Phil Fish, that is your career path, right? We don't want the normal Phil Fish, the sane, rational, gets along
Go off
with
your
everyone.
meds.
We want the Phil
That's what
Fish,
I just heard you say.
Yes. We want the Phil Fish who breaks up with every company partner he ever has.
I don't know. Like, there's being right.
Apparently Fez is a great damn game, so if that's what it costs to have a great damn game, I'm willing to take it. I'm willing to accept the cost.
I'm good with the
of
civility.
Phil Fish's sanity.
I will pay. I will trade you the good game for the civility. No, I mean, there's a difference between being right and being right in the right way. And,
yeah.
you know,
yeah.
Maybe there is no good guy here.
Nah.
I got an article James Gunn put up on James Gunn interview on Destructoid that some of these sexism controversies are just silly.
Which sexism controversies?
Well, and he goes on to start naming like the Tomb Raider one and all of that, of like these fan reactions to like creating a Lara Croft where the users are made to feel like they need to protect her and shelter her. That's a game designer's prerogative. It's just silly and all of that. I linked to this because it's like, you don't fucking get it at all, do you? You have it.
I just heard it was a Moe Lara Croft.
Well, it's kind of this weird like.
She's pretty badass.
You have
You have to
really
protect
rationalized your sexism. Like, this is the way it read to me. Okay, this will read different to different people, of course. But, like, reading this article, like, I could read the James Gunn of, like, this is the mindset of these designers putting out this game. Like, here's a glimpse of how they have rationalized away all the sexism that they put into the games, right? All of, like, Lollipop Chainsaw's talked about in there, things like that, of, like, there's basically zero harm. This is just internet drama and things like that. And, it misses on two things. One, it's not zero harm. But that can be debated of, like, just don't play it. And I'm for that debate. But two, the alternative does not exist. And that's the problem. The problem isn't that there's this awful Lara Croft sexism exploitation game. Or there's this Lollipop Chainsaw game, which is just pure TNA is all that game is selling on, right? Even the Giant Bomb crew who review the game, they're like, I so wanted to like the charm of this game, and I can't because the gameplay is horrible. And
sexism is one of those things that it's a touchy subject. I don't think it's specific to sexism in general. I think it's just culturally how it exists, where you can put forth a quote unquote strong female character, but if she gets by, like you're saying, like if she also has the objectification that you see in Lollipop Chainsaw, or if she gets ahead by her appearance or sexuality or something like that, you can fool everyone into thinking you've got it all figured out, but you're really doing just as much damage as...
Exactly. It's like everything she's doing, or, like in the worst case too, like everything that she's doing, like the girls in Gears of War, the women in Gears of War 3, they're just dudes with boobs. There's nothing different about their characters, their reactions, what they do in the game, other than it's a female character.
I haven't seen it. That doesn't bother me as much because at least
it's not as offensive as say the Lara Croft rape scene. Okay, when she goes off in there and everything like that, of like look, if you don't understand why that's an issue, you actually have a problem. Now, if you come out and post an article of like, I understand this issue, but as artists, we need the room to explore.
Yes.
I'm good with you there. And the thing, and like I said, the thing that you're missing and he's missing in this article is not the fact that you explore the idea of rape in a video game. Okay? Like, okay, we're going to go there and we're going to make that a topic, okay? And maybe it's done well, maybe it's not. I don't care. The thing is that the alternative isn't out there, right? Like, it's really to one extreme. There's not a whole lot of games coming out there that, you know, the female demographic is resonating around, you know? And you know what that exactly is? Like, I don't have an answer. I'm not gonna get here and tell you, like, yes, you just need to go make games like this. Like, it's not cliches. It's not make a puzzle game, put it in pink, allow dress up. Like, that is not it. I watched a lot of Mass Effect 3 ending discussion. Because while I was sick and while I was out, that's all I did. I played Mass Effect 3. I know we talked about this before a little bit. I played the game like I did all the other Mass Effect games. I played through the entire fucking game twice, 100% completion twice, got every achievement in the game. Mass Effect 3 is fucking awesome, right? I'll give you the Batman line. The ending was not the ending the fans wanted, but it's the ending they deserved, okay?
Okay.
The ending is a damn good ending. It is, you know, the more I watch it, especially when I downloaded the extended cut and then watched the extended cut ending, the extended cut ending is worse. Not because they change anything, because they really don't change anything in the ending. They just kind of fill in some things for you, and it becomes that annoying, like,
here, let me hold your hand and lead you through this.
And lead you to what you were supposed to think about and take all effort out of you. And it's like, I hate that. I hate that. It doesn't work in movies. It doesn't work in books. Don't over-explain. And that's what the extending cut does. It over-explains everything for everyone. Because there were some stupid things people said about the ending of, like, Joker abandoned Shepard at the end, you know, because of this one scene. And it's like, man, you are hair-picking and nitpicking and just trying to come up with this thing that fits with none of the other 3 games of what these characters are. He would never do that. He is the guy that went down with the ship. You know? Joker is the man that Shepard came back to save, and it cost Shepard his life, okay? So, no, that is not the case, right? There's other things going on, and to me it was dramatic, because it was a very sliced moment of, like, after your decision, which again, the whole, like, oh, you picked, like, 1 or 3 palette swaps. They didn't feel like that to me. They felt like, when I got to that decision the first time, I had to stop and really figure out, oh shit,
because they didn't really label them, but I was looking at the
I'm
pictures.
talking about like what I wanted to choose, not what the graphics look like. Okay. I'm not talking about that. They had meaning. They tie in with the world, like this whole little like, oh, you just have to make a choice at the end that has nothing to do with the bullshit all the way through. And I just think that the problem was they ended the story.
Right.
And people want their heroes to go on forever. And they want to have a Mass Effect 4. Like, even Halo didn't kill Master Chief at the end of Halo, right? Right? There's still a Master Chief at the end of the last Halo. You could still have a Halo 4 or 5 with Master Chief. He could still come back, and maybe just wrap up the Covenant story or something, right?
Yeah.
But it's still left open for people to just milk to death. And one of the reasons, I think I talked about this with John on Twitter at one point, one of the reasons I got into anime was stories fucking end.
Right.
They end brutally, but they end in a great, epic manner. Shit happens at the end.
Things change.
Things have irrevocably changed at the end.
The alternative is kind of
Bebop.
this weird bastardized permanence where, like, nothing ever changes, and therefore, you know, you always have, you know, I don't know.
I don't know why I got all off on that. I think that was also a good female game, though. I think it's a good way of handling female in games.
The difficulty...
Oh, I know, I mentioned that. Because I watched a lot of video for commentary and all that, and trying to understand what people were upset about and everything. Because remember, I avoided all that before. So now I kind of wanted to see it, see what the arguments were and all of that, before I dismissed it like I did then. You know, I wanted to, like, know what the arguments were. And I watched a ton of female players discussing the ending and in the game and different viewpoints and all that. And it's just like, yeah, they're out there. You're not serving this audience. This audience is there, and you're not giving them a whole lot to choose from. And that is kind of the real detriment.
Yeah, Yeah, the difficulty with sexism, and probably a lot of other things, but like I said, culturally, at the time we're in, I think sexism is the big thing, is it's not really a checklist you can go like, well, I have this, this, and this in my game, therefore, it's not sexist. Oh, my main character doesn't get raped, like, the example with Tomb Raider. And really it's more of an attitude. You're right, it is the ability to, go, like you said that you wish the developers of Tomb Raider had done and said, we're trying to do this particular thing. Kind of a self-awareness about what you're doing and that you are capable of doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Also, the way it's... The other problem is like, I think that was a calculated marketing decision to put that out there to generate controversy around the game to boost sales.
And of course, that is a variable I'm not even figuring into this line of thinking, because people don't do asinine things just for attention. I don't understand that. Brain does not process that.
Madfinger, Android app, basically, I don't know how to get these numbers, but suffered an 80% piracy rate. It's a 99-cent game.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
now, my guess is this is...
And then there was also, like, other stats coming out of, like, some other games having really high found piracy rates. So, like, the game's phone home, with stats and data, and so people know if it was a purchased or if it was a pirated. Or they basically know, like, we sold this many copies, yet this many copies of our game are updating the leaderboards.
Okay. How are they... I mean, is this like trying to compare it to Android versus iOS? Because I imagine iOS has a dramatically lower...
They didn't have like a comparison in that article to it. That's kind of the behind-the-scenes implication. And also, like, it's very, very easy to root and unlock Android devices and sideload apps, that is jailbreaking an iPhone is a big deal.
Yeah.
Versus Android.
And I'm not even sure if that opens you up to being able to run pirated apps.
Possibly, I guess. I'm not sure either.
I'm not sure where you would get them.
Yeah, but it's like, I'm not going to jailbreak my iPhone because, like, the risk of bricking that, whereas Android, there's almost, not quite, there's almost instructions from Google on how to do that. That's a done thing, where people grab the latest Google build and then root things and install it. And, so speaking of all that, OnLive is coming to the UA.
I don't know.
So that's one way to combat piracy on the DRM-free console is the streaming video game service.
I still, like... the idea of a streaming game service makes me uncomfortable because I can deal with DRM because at least I have... Like, that game is running on my equipment. I have it. I prefer to, have a physical copy or have a DRM-free copy, but it just seems like it's going the wrong way. I'm not sure if that'll change because
on one hand, I do my Netflix, I do my RDO.
Exactly.
So I pay $10 a month to RDO, $15 a month to Netflix.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Maybe it's 10. I don't remember. Maybe it's $10 each. And I stream all the movies I want when I want them, and I play all my songs when I want them. And so the idea of like $10 or $15 a month to just have access to this game catalog, it's like, yeah, I should be on board with that. But I'm kind of with you for one part of like, I have this huge Steam collection of digital purchases I own I haven't gotten to yet. And I don't think I'm playing $10 to $15 a month worth of games. Also, there's the issue of like, I want to play Mass Effect 3. I'm probably not going to be able to stream that one. So, like, my big titles aren't going to be there. So it just seems like this collection of in-the-middle titles. But that's not fair to OnLive, because I haven't really delved into what their catalog is and what's going on.
Yeah. And
now, I think if they were to manage to land, say, like a Sega and Nintendo deal, and they actually had properly emulated or ported versions of all the classics, okay? I've actually been watching an endurance run of Chrono Trigger. And part of my understanding JRPGs. I think I should play it to really understand it. And I'm kind of worried about watching this endurance run. I won't play it now because so far it seems like Chrono Trigger is linear.
It is. You have to finish one playthrough to get the branching paths.
Well, no, you can get most of the branching paths off that first playthrough, but there are some playthroughs that are some paths that you can only get on the second playthrough.
So it seems like, because I don't think there's any way in hell I'd do a second playthrough.
It's much easier.
I played through that thing so many times. I am kind of like, I couldn't go back and replay it because I'm kind of just like...
I have it on the DS.
It's been 15 years.
And I've started a game, but I don't think I've gotten to the third level.
I went to try to load it on my DS with my SNES emulator on my DS, and apparently that's one of the games that has emulation issues, so that it doesn't emulate well on anything. And then I thought of borrowing her SNES copy to play it, and I was like, I don't want to.
It is worth playing for the combat system because it's very different from Final Fantasy, but not quite.
Yeah. And
the hassle
as we talk about this, I am kind of leaning toward not what my first menu-based combat claims were in our game. Like I am kind of like, let's evolve it a little bit. I think where we get to, it may not even be right to call it a JRPG anymore by traditional means. Like where we end up taking it and the things we combine and the things we add to it. It won't be a Western action RPG, but I think there's things that I'm picking up from the other games to kind of combine and all that. But anyway, so watching that, if the OnLive service had Chrono Trigger, and had all these great classics, and Zelda Link to the Past, and all of these here, right? And I could just go in and, because these games have emulator issues, I'm finding, as I get into it. Link to the Past does a little bit too.
I didn't run into any, but I use...
I haven't checked my current version of my SNES emulator on my DS. That's really where I like to play these.
Oh, I'm talking about, the PC one.
Because the DS fits like a SNES controller. Because you have bumpers, and you have 4 buttons, and the directional pad, so they map really well to what the Super Nintendo controller was. So I like playing it there versus on a PC. Although I guess I could do an Xbox controller would be fine. Map to the emulator.
I don't notice. In fact, I'm so used to the Xbox controller, and I imagine a lot of people are so used to the PS3 controller, and they actually are really well designed controllers. That going in and playing an NES or SNES game just feels natural to me.
Yeah.
On one
of those. I would probably be down for the online service. If they managed to land something like that. So not necessarily the new game titles, but if you offered me all the back titles to all these old games on all these other platforms, that's kind of interesting. Then that might just be because, A, I'm older, but B, I'm also a game designer, and a lot of times I just need to, for research, go play Chrysalis. I need to go play a couple hours of Chrysalis now.
But I think that's where I kind of warmed up to Netflix when I realized I wanted to have this collection, but for $20 for a movie or $50 for a series, probably not going to watch it more than once. For the majority of things, okay, I can deal with it. But
yeah.
So in that case, OnLive isn't
now OnLive coming to a console though. At least kind of gives that console a library.
Yes,
it's kind of a joke because OnLive is like running on anything.
Yeah,
so it doesn't need anything special of the console. But that's good because those people that do that, they're granted they're gonna have to pay another license fee to get that. But they'll have real games on that console.
Yeah. The issue, and like I said, with all we talked about the Ouya, that I could see that being the thing that spurs on the revolution. But that is not the console that will likely do it, just because of the way. We discussed that.
Roku boxes are getting into gaming with Big Fish partnership. So, Big Fish is one of these kind of flash games, or these little mini PC games. They've been around for a while. My mom played these before, even I think before like Steam was big and things like that. My dad used to come over and complain because he'd be trying to back this stuff up and couldn't quite back up the games and all that because they were all digital unlocks. So Big Fish, I remember being in like the dawn of like the digital distribution era. And they're mostly little puzzle games and stuff like that my mom would play. But they would have like the bad side of DRM effects attached to them. Like internet wasn't working, so mom couldn't play her games and she didn't understand why and that kind of thing. But they've signed a deal basically with Roku to start providing games for the Roku. I mean, I like this story from the point of I want some dark horses to enter the console market to shake things up. I don't think this is it. I don't think the Roku has the install base of people who know to play games on it, right? Because unfortunately, the Roku does a few things I think that keep it from being a successful box. One is they don't support YouTube.
Right.
There's no YouTube on the box. Two is they don't support the Universal Plug and Play, the DLNA media servers. So if you have media servers on your network, you have to jump through some hoops and install some extra software like Plex and get some extra stuff up and running to get that working. Yeah. And that is not in the realm of the average person. Whereas if you just pop in an Apple TV, it finds your Windows 7 PC and the media available on it.
Yeah, actually that's, I think Woot had a 1080p Roku, the XD, not the one with the games and stuff today for like 50, and I looked at it and like, man, that would be nice.
If it supported the streaming...
If it supported some, like Samba file shares or something, it would be the ultimate, but it doesn't. And I'm not even talking about, like, it needs to have all these crazy codec supports. It just won't play off the network on its own. Yeah. And that is a huge oversight. I do not understand why Roku does not fix these two things. I do not understand. YouTube is on everything but Roku, so I don't get that. And you know, and the reason for YouTube is, you know, there's a lot of videos that I watch that are on YouTube. There's a lot of shows and programs that make sure they have their stuff on YouTube. And so a lot of times, some of these longer presentations and talks I would like to watch on the TV. I do it on the Xbox now. I just go into my YouTube account and I save to a favorites playlist. And then when I go into my Xbox, I just hit YouTube favorites. I don't search on the console or anything like that. That's horrible. Web is much better for that. But when I find something I don't have time to watch, I save it for later, and then I'm on the device, and I just play it, and I hate that I can't do that. I generally like the Roku and like the Roku interfaces. I watch a lot of Giant Bomb videos through the Roku. At some point, I still think we need to put out a Roku for us when we get back into video production, which is a plan of mine. I do want to get back to that, and I know this is putting Captain Dubstep even further out, but I do want to get that infrastructure set up to start just being able to regularly put up some content like we did before. And I do have some ideas for some low effort content, so we can get back into that. But I miss having the video component to our site. I just like that. Yeah. Also, I want to take some of the talks that I'm doing and some of the subjects that I do and turn them into standalone videos. So like this won't be regular content. You might get one of these once every 2 months that I have time to do this, but I have these talks that I go on the road and give. And, like, I can just stand in front of the green screen and then give the talk and then put behind the green screen my slide deck, and then there we go. I've got some content focused for developers on the site. That's my thing there. Let's talk about Notch. Talk about indie developers. Notch seems to keep himself in the news quite a bit, actually. You notice that? Mm-hmm. Like, he's always in the news for something. Yeah, to the degree. Like, I haven't played Minecraft.
And I don't know if it's just because a lot of people hang on everything he says, and so if he tweets something or blogs something, it becomes news, or the guy likes the spotlight a little bit and is always making sure to throw something out there.
I just assume it's because I don't follow Minecraft anymore.
Well, I follow Notch, and most of the stuff that he posts on his Twitter feed is just silly stuff, or he's retweeting one of the other developers in his studio or something like that. He's mostly off working, it looks like, on the next big project. And I'm just like, okay, you do that. I read about his next big project, and I'm like, yes, that sounds a little too smart for me. Thank you. I'll stick to my Legos.
Yeah, but I mean, I figure it's just the Minecraft.
So, the news item here is basically EA, Notch, Mojang, and Square were sued by this company that's trying to claim it's not a company, patent troll company, and things like that. Basically, this company has shaken down a lot of companies because they patented the ability to basically have a serial key type unlock system for software.
Wait.
You mean, so everything that...
Like, they are getting royalties from Microsoft and Sony and all of these. Activision, I think, pays. And so they issued this lawsuit because they went after these other companies. And it's really news because Notch posted, "Fuck you guys." And he posted about... Literally, it was like, "Fuck you guys, I will spend an inordinate amount of money making sure I never give you any. Also... your whole patent thing is a bunch of bullshit, and patents in general are awful, and you guys are hurting innovation, and software patents are evil, and I'm just not gonna do this." Like, I am, this indie guy who has lucked into shit tons of money that instead of blowing it on hookers and blow, I'm going to fight Bethesda over the trademark of scrolls, and I am going to, fight a patent troll with it. You know what, Nosh, man? You made your fucking money. Do with it as you will. I take nothing from you. And I'm kind of behind you on this one, take these guys in a little bit. Now, it kind of got dark, a little bit because the president of the company posted of hey, there's a lot of research and effort into this patent, and, we put a lot of time in this, and I'm an inventor, and, it protects me, and yada yada. And then he got straight up hate mail. Cause you don't, speak bad of Notch. Notch called you bad guy, you don't come back out and say, hey, you don't get it, right?
No, you are now the bad guy.
Went off on him, and then he was kind of oh my god, why this? I don't even, technically, work for the patent in question or the company that's suing. That's not my decision, but, he's sharing culpability and blame. But he also kind of wandered into the conversation by, posting his thoughts on the matter, right? To do that. So, and it does seem ridiculous because, this patent was issued in, mid-90s.
Yeah.
So, there is that.
If he was going after just Microsoft and had said that, then people would have been like, whatever, it's Microsoft. They can pay the money. But Notch is sacrosanct.
So, then the other thing, and I'm going to call some bullshit on Notch on this one. I am going to be the guy that goes against Notch on this, even though I said it's not a good idea. So Notch posted a whole bunch of worries and made quotes on, he's worrying that PC gaming is getting owned by Steam, and he's worried about a dominant platform. And it's to me... that does not apply on the PC. Even though Steam is very dominant, right? As long as it's on the PC, it's technically an open platform.
Steam's never going to own
There's still
Mac, Windows, or Linux.
Good old games. There's still Desraila, or whatever. Desura. Personally, no, I don't fucking use them. I use Steam because it's fucking awesome. But if Steam stops being awesome, it's not going to be hard for any of these others who have already built the infrastructure to start to step up, It didn't take long, it's kind of like social networking, right?
Yeah.
The web is not a closed platform. When Friendster fucked it up, we went to MySpace. When MySpace fucked it up, we went to Facebook. When Facebook fucked it up, we tried to go to Google+, but they fucked it up, so we went back to Facebook.
Well, and
the next person hasn't stepped up yet.
His argument sounds more valid for something like, Xbox Live or PSN or Mac App Store, where you are locked.
I brought up the story that Minecraft XBLA has surpassed 3 billion downloads. So don't complain about a closed system when you're in bed with the fucking devil, right? Okay, stop here. You refuse to release your game on Steam because you're worried about... So initially he said they didn't release on Steam because they couldn't update their game and do it the way they want. But actually Valve has changed Steam so that Minecraft could go on Steam now, and Notch can continue to update it like he wants and have all these add-ins and extensions. So Valve has made Steam what he needed it to be. And now he's kind of saying they're this kind of big dominant force, and we're not on there because, it reinforces the thing of power. And I think indie games should set up their own distribution site and and dork all that and
I
keep
hate
the
to
money
say it, but
themselves.
that's an easier argument to make when you're on the side of like suddenly making it big.
Right.
When you're on the wrong, like,
yes.
I hate to say that. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I would totally be against Steam if I didn't think it was my only chance to sell a game on the PC.
Correct. And, you know,
Yeah.
the whole idea of, like, I'm going to have to go to all these different individual sites to buy all their games,
Yeah.
you know,
And updating all that crap is a bitch.
Notch proved it can work and it can be a system, but it's not a scalable solution. I'm not going to trust every website. Am I going to trust the Team Meat guys? Yeah, okay, I'll trust them to get Super Meat
Yeah.
Boy from them directly. The VVV guys? I think looks like a Commodore 64 game. Like, we're going down in statute, okay? The Trauma guys that made the weird, like, point-and-click adventure game
Yeah.
that came with the Humble Bundle. No way in hell. I only
Humble
played that
Bundle
because I got
is-
that on the Humble Bundle. I would not trust their site because it looks like a Flash game.
I was going to say, Humble Bundle is one way around that, but, you know, Humble Bundle
Right, what I'm
then
saying is,
becomes...
Those games that were on the Humble Bundle, I would not go to most of their sites to buy that game.
Yeah. The interesting thing with Notch is I'm sure, like, he would have even had that problem because, you know, Minecraft, I think you paid through PayPal. But I think if you get enough people playing it, there's the trust there to say, no, it's okay, I bought this.
Yeah.
Of course, again, the issue is it's easier to say that on
After
the other
fact.
side of being a
Right.
success.
And, again, like, you're claiming you're not
Critical
going to go to
mass changes
Steam
everything.
because that empowers Steam dominance while putting your game out on XBLA. Like,
Well,
to me, is pick a side, okay? Either you're against closed platforms, so keep your system on open platforms, or, like, hey, my way of fighting this is being on all platforms.
Well, and the difficulty about making an argument about dominance, and I said this when we talked about Kickstarter, is, Kickstarter is a great alternative to, publisher dominance in the industry. But you have things like internet buzz and PR. There are other forms of dominance out there. So you replace Steam with Humble Bundle. You replace it with Desura or
And the other thing to
anything
remember
else.
of, like, all this
You're
evil
setting
of
up the
Steam,
possibility of it
the other
happening
thing to
again.
remember here is, like, all this evilness of Steam is just theoretical and supposed. So
It
far,
is.
Valve has done the opposite in every case. Like, when they had their initial complaints of Steam, of, like, how they do their update system, it can never work because it has to go through Valve's network, and that's not the way we work, and people mod the games, and
Yeah.
Steam has to have this kind of DRM thing. They fixed all of that. They're like, okay, you can turn all that stuff off. That's the way you want to do it,
Yeah.
So, they haven't acted in that manner yet. Let's not suppose the worst.
Well, but the issue is they have the potential to, but so does anything else that gains popularity.
You're
have the
convicting them on the
potential
potential, not the act.
Yeah.
And that's a little disingenuous as well. So, speaking of Steam, Gabe Newell had an interview. In his interview, he said many things.
But none of them matter
things-
except
All things digital. But the one we want to call out is Gabe's Newell's comments on Windows 8. I'm going to read this verbatim.
Oh dear.
I think Windows 8 is a catastrophe for everyone in the PC space. I think we'll lose some of the top tier PC/OEMs who will exit the market. I think margins will be destroyed for a bunch of people. If that's true, then it will be good to have alternatives to hedge against that eventuality. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. It's the apocalypse. Windows 8 brings about the end of the world. All that last bit he didn't say, up until the point of, like, having good, eventuality. But, like, did not muddle words here, right?
no.
Now, Gabe actually could get some props because Gabe Newell actually said the same shit about Vista. Like, he came out early and said, Vista is a piece of shit you want to avoid. This is a joke. Like, don't waste your time here. Okay? So he gets some props and some credit there. It's also interesting anytime like somebody his stature comes out and doesn't give the standard hedge comment. Well, you know, as platforms evolve, we will support platforms that are popular among the people, and Microsoft's a big company, and there's sure to be a good uptake of this.
To be fair, Metro and the Windows App Store kind of kills
Steam,
the usefulness
there's
of Steam.
a slight competition level
that
there.
said, I'm glad he said it.
At one point, Gabe worked for Microsoft, too. I doubt there's a chip on his shoulder because he is so far. I mean, I'm sure Steam rakes in more money than Live.
Oh, yeah.
And so he can probably just, like, flip him off from his gold-plated palace and, like, you know, suck it down as your company goes in flames.
I'm not saying that is his reason for saying it. I'm just saying I think it merits being said before any discussion that any conclusions we come to
ties in the
could be
interview
wrong.
With a lot of discussion of getting Steam
mixed
to Linux and that effort. And this all just ties into my Steam console predictions. Like, all this, I may be projecting a little bit, but I'm telling you there's a Steam console coming. Get Source running on Steam. So games that use Source... I'm sorry, get Source running on Linux. So games that use Source run on Windows, Mac, and PC. Sorry, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Done. That is done, right? That is either out or coming out or something like that. Get games using Source and get a Linux client up. I don't think Gabe thinks he's going to make a whole lot of money off of Linux gaming. I don't think that's why he's going into this. But once you have those in place, right, you can flag games as supporting everything. You can have these humble bundles that can give Steam codes for Linux now. You can build up this Linux audience, and you can build up this title library of Linux-supported games so that when you launch the Steam console that uses Linux as its OS, so you don't pay anybody any damn royalties, you've already got all the Linux-based games of Steam already on the console day one. Nobody has to port anything to run on there. Better yet, you run on our Source engine and we get you to all the platforms that you care about anyway. So I think there's a dark, sinister plan afoot for that Steam console, and I'm on board.
I think it's a possibility. I think it may just be hedging their bets because I imagine, you know, if Windows 8 is as bad as he thinks it will be, which it could be, and Microsoft does not correct. Like, Microsoft doesn't pull a 7, to 8's Vista.
Right.
If that makes sense. And yeah, it's not that crazy to think that, I mean, people are dual booting Mac and Windows.
It's not.
So...
No one has really given the Linux gaming run like a serious run. Like, have a good library of titles on there. There's been a game or two, right? But if you have a serious run at it, and Windows 8 is this cluster, and, Ubuntu and Debian have really raised the desktop Linux bar.
Yeah. Your
gamers are your tinkerers. I mean, they get in there and install video cards and all that. NVIDIA has always done good Linux support. So, maybe it could be proven wrong. Maybe it could be the time of like, yeah, Linux gaming can get Linux desktop to be more popular, and go. And, the Linux users are always the biggest donators on the Humble Bundle. So maybe those old truths are no longer true.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not a short-term hedge. I think it's probably a long-term hedge, but it's smart. Given Windows 8.
Now, this is just a tweet. So fucking Kotaku makes it like a full fucking story. And that's why I'm not even looking at Kotaku. In fact, people sent me the Kotaku article, and then I tried to find, like, sites covering it, because I don't read Kotaku anymore, because I don't. There's no such thing as journalism on Kotaku. And I'm, like, trying to find out what nobody else is talking about, Blizzard talking about Windows 8, and it find out, like, the whole source of the story is one fucking tweet. Now, so Rob Pardo, who's like this VP at Blizzard, very high up, executive VP, basically said, hey, nice Gabe interview with Gabe Newell, our friends over at Valve. Quotes I think Windows 8 is a catastrophe for everyone in the PC space, and he basically says, not awesome for Blizzard either. So, it is a high-level Blizzard rep going, yeah, Windows 8 not great. which is good data point, not what Kotaku blew it out to be. You know, of like, Blizzard condemns that. Like, no, Blizzard did not. Blizzard did not come out and do that. Just a tweet.
I don't think, like...
Tweets are far from corporate policy.
The issue is, I think, people want to take out of context the catastrophe part of it. I mean, it's not that it's going to destroy the computing landscape and change everything. But, yeah, I think, you know, we're going to see what Microsoft does after that will determine whether they continue to have dominance.
To round out our news coverage and company game coverage, let's talk a little about Zynga. Trading now at like $3 a share. They missed their earnings or something or whatever, I don't know. They lost a shit ton of money. And it came out that a bunch of the Zynga CEO and a bunch of other employees all sold their shares when Zynga was up at $12 a share. All suspiciously around the same time, and then like shortly thereafter it craters. There's already 2 law firms that specialize in security investigations, representing shareholders, investigating in insider trading claims. And so basically, you know, if you're at a company, there are restricted windows from when you can make buys and sells if you have access to financial data. And essentially they traded like before that window came open, like right before. And then if they get caught having withheld any of the financial information or knew about the financial information when they made those sales or trades, they could be caught liable and all that. But Zynga's tanking. So what do you think Zynga's solution is to get money?
Considering we already talked about their cloud computing platform or whatever,
we're off that now.
I don't even want to...
Yeah, we're no longer going to sell the Zynga platform. That was last week's news. Now we have a new idea to save the company.
Hassling pedestrians for money on the street? I don't know. What?
Closer.
Legal defense, or not legal... Yeah, legal defense fund. Sure, why not? They are getting...
Zynga is going to enter the real money gambling market.
The fuck?
They're going to set up servers on the Cayman Islands.
They're going to be a
outside the U.S. Jurisdiction. And Zynga Poker is going to be for real fucking money. Because while they make like $3 a month on average or something, or whatever it was, like you make like an average of $300 a month, the average gamer in the real poker tournament games.
So, scummy casual gaming developer becomes scummier online gambling. Like, everything.
They doubled down on the dark side. They were like, what do we do?
I see what you did there.
We're halfway there.
You got that one?
Yes,
the blackjack reference?
They doubled down.
Yeah,
yes.
doubled down.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, fuck, you know, it is what the dark side do. It's like, fucking build another Death Star. Like, Death Star didn't work. What do we do? We fucking built a bigger Death Star.
And patch that damn hole.
I said scummy. I didn't say evil. There's a difference. And it is a very fundamental difference. Evil has an aesthetic about it. So scummy has no aesthetic.
Like, the whole, like, the full tilt poker guys and all that,
yeah,
they got raided and shit not too long ago. And they were the most legit of all of them. Like, Full Tilt Poker was the one that had licensed all the poker stars who go on the poker tournaments on ESPN and everything.
They went as legit as you can go.
Yeah, they were as legit as you possibly could be. And they got raided for financial fraud and laundering. Basically, because you're going to have to go through laundering steps to get that money to the company. They're a U.S. company. Unless Zynga is like, okay, we're off the U.S. Stock Exchange and we've left the U.S., I don't see how this differs. I don't see what Zynga can do.
Well, with the other company that got raided, was it the fact that they had to set up things as they did, or is it just like, hey, we got a money laundering service. Wonder what else we could do with that? Well, no, it wasn't. As far as I read, it was not any kind of like they've actually committed crimes using their system. It's that their system we legislated to be a crime. Okay, so, like, I mean, the laws just kept getting tougher and more restrictive on, like, using Visa payments to pay for gambling and using credit cards, and then it became like,
banks who transfer money between a Visa card and a gambling institution. Then, and just kind of like, so it basically made it for like, you would have to like, because people have to use a credit card, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have to go like Switzerland, use this Bank of Switzerland account that transferred into this Cayman Islands bank account, that transferred into this New York bank account, so that Full Tilt could get their thing. And at that point, like, it's almost like mafia level full-on money laundering of the source, so they crack down on them for that, at which point, when it's money laundering at that point, then it is like full-on FBI raids and shut down and
I think
seizing
they got
assets.
raided like 6 times in a couple of months.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I don't see how Full Tilt Poker, which was generally on the up and up, every which way they could be, you know. The one saving grace, I think there was a ruling that, to go along with, like, I want to say this goes along with, like, the gay marriage ruling, that struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, the court ruling. I think there was a similar ruling. It basically says, like, the federal government can't make this law because that is a state's right.
Right.
So individual states have to make their own laws, and like the Defense of Marriage Act, because like the tax code defined marriage between man and woman, gets struck down because it's like, no, you have to accept the state's definition of marriage. You cannot redefine it because that is a state's right.
Right.
And I think there's something similar with gambling, of like, that is a state's right. You can't have a federal law regulating that. So there may be some of the money laundering stuff, but it's real easy to trip commerce between states, and then it becomes a federal issue, even though they don't have the individual state jurisdiction. Once it crosses state lines, they do.
I'm assuming that's why people don't just go to Nevada to set up online gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't go to the
you can't just headquarter in Nevada and then
you can't
like
headquarters in
everything's cool.
Biloxi. You can't headquarters anywhere where you have big gambling houses.
So, Kickstarter. Let's get to the subject, the point here. I compiled a database of about 57,000 Kickstarter projects. Okay? And in this data, it is hard. There's a caveat on this data first. It is not complete. It has about 90% of the projects. At the time that I did my analysis, I had about a little over 90%. But Kickstarter makes it hard to find failed projects. Kickstarter whitewashes their search results and things to favor successful projects. And it's quite extreme in some cases. So the result of my data is that I show overall 48% of projects were successful, and Kickstarter says 44% of projects are successful. Now, I say that just so you kind of know, don't take the numbers verbatim. The numbers I'm getting into are, is it getting better or worse, and what helps or doesn't. So we're basically looking at the numbers as compared to themselves, and that kind of mitigates, I don't have all the failed projects, but you can't just quote these numbers verbatim. So the first thing I started asking, I'm going to show these numbers for overall, and then also for video games specifically. The video game specifically, my data set showed a 27% success rate, way below the norm. Kickstarter doesn't actually publish video game only rates. They get one for games, but that includes the games, board games, card games, and video game categories, all under one. And Kickstarter said that had a 34%, and I showed a 38% there. So again, that 4% delta. So that 27% I'm telling you now might actually be like 23, 24%. It's not good. It's very low for game success rates. That didn't surprise me. No. Going through the games like I do, there's a lot of garbage up there. Kickstarter doesn't curate.
No, it's one that it's a category that's taken off because there's been high.
And then I subtracted a lot of
like very well recognized, the Double Fine Adventure and things like that.
It attracted a lot, like Xbox Live Indie Game does, of a lot of like first effort games that aren't going to get funded.
Right.
So
exactly.
That you should take with a grain of salt when the number's that low, because a lot of these you could just immediately go like don't belong here, and that's why the numbers are low. If those were curated out, we might have a more realistic number that approached the other categories. But the first thing, so when I did my stats, the point of the stats was to ask relevant questions that you could use in building your own Kickstarter. So the first example I have here is success rate by having a video. So overall, the baseline, like I said, 48%. If you have a video, it goes to 52%, and if you don't have a video, your success rate is only 35%. So not having a video on your project hurts your success rate greatly. This doesn't get into the quality of the video. This is just whether or not you have one. For the video games, like I said, video games are down there at the 27% level. So 29% if you have a video, and like 13% if you don't. So it definitely went down if you don't have a video. You want to have a video. It wasn't as marked as an increase.
And video games lend themselves very well to video, so that's probably part of it.
Probably. And yeah, so there are probably a lot more of the video games with video. By the way, again, all these charts are up on their sites, everything. The next data point that I looked at is success by the length of the project. And the chart they got up here, you're looking at a scatter chart with a regression line plotted. For those that care, I used a polynomial regression instead of a linear regression, because in this case, I'm going for a best fit regression. Linear regressions are good when you're trying to project along the X or Y axes. In this case, there's no need to project along the X and Y axes because the Y axis is capped from 0 to 100%, and you can only make a project so long, so you can't actually project in either direction. So we really want a best fit so that we can kind of tease out the shape of the data and the sweet spot. And the punchline became there's between 8 and 34 days, if that's how long you put your project up for, there's a real nice sweet spot where you stay over 60% success rate, sometimes up to 70%. It does stay in your favor to stay below 45 days, but there is a definite boost between 8 and 34 days. Now that is overall. When I looked at those numbers for just video games, the problem, first of all, is I only have 1,100 video games to look at. So the data set is smaller, but the data was all over the place. The data, I mean, there is a regression line calculated because, you can do the math. You can calculate the line. But looking at this, I would say there is no correlation between how long your project is up and whether or not you get funded for a video game. So while overall 34 to 8% was the winner, when just looking at the video games, I did not see an overall correlation, which is good. Maybe you can stretch it out. Maybe you can ask for a little bit longer. So in my opinion, I toss out that correlation. I'm not keeping it. The next chart that I want to plot is success rate by the goal asked for, right? So how much money did your project ask for, and what was the success rate again? Again, we're looking at a scatter plot with a polynomial regression, and essentially asking for overall $5,000 or less was a sweet spot. Projects that asked for $5,000 or less were more successful than the average. Asking for above that went down. And this, even though I used a polynomial regression, this is almost a classic textbook linear regression here. This is almost perfectly dots in a line matching up there. But when I went to the games, the pattern wasn't as clear. Okay? But there still was a point in which you were better to stay above. And that was $8,000 to $9,000. To say under $9,000. asking for $9,000 or more seemed to be the drop-off point. It was a little bit tighter in the data than the project length. So I went ahead and left that in there and said, look, if you go over $9,000, you are hurting the odds of your project, even though the data wasn't very tight. I don't have a lot of data points here compared to the overall data set. So I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna say $9,000, less than $9,000 is the sweet spot. The next chart here is pledge level, number of pledge levels. Okay, this is just the number of pledge levels that you have. I didn't expect this to be significant. I didn't think having a whole bunch of different options was really going to affect success rate of a project. Turns out I was wrong. The more you have, the better. It pretty much just keeps going up. And I'm going to say for overall, having 7 or more is the sweet spot. So at least have 7 pledge levels or more. When you go into video games, it's 10 or more. It's more than 10. Okay? So people like options. And there didn't seem to be a penalty to having an insane number of options. You know, I found one project had 138 options. Now that project actually did fail. But it had 138 reward tiers. And there was one with like 99 that did succeed. So people like choice, it turns out. And that was not a negative. You didn't overwhelm people.
99 options, and a bitch ain't one.
The next thing I looked at was the length of description. Now, I had to look at the length of the description as HTML characters, because that's what I have in my database. I didn't take time to try to clean that up and extract and do word counts. That would have been the better number. Like how many words in the description. But I just looked at HTML lengths. And there was a marked point at 2,000 characters at which you did better. Short descriptions definitely hurt. But once you crossed 2,000, there wasn't a significant increase beyond that. So just have a good description was the overall number. The video game number on description length was a little more pronounced in the negatives. And the crossover point was 4,000. Again, not a strong point past 4,000, but it definitely tended to trend up a little stronger than it did overall. So you want to have more than 4,000 HTML characters in your description for a video game. Alright. So what happens if... Oh, wait. FAQ length. I didn't hit FAQ length. The FAQ length overall... Most projects, like, of my 57,000, like 46,000, had no FAQ. Now, projects that did showed an increase, but man, so few had that overall, I threw it out. I said, you know what, it looks good to have an FAQ, so I'm going to recommend it, but statistically, I'm not going to back that recommendation. The video games, however, showed a tighter correlation, and the more FAQs you had, the better it got. It just got better and better and better. And more games, like 70% of the games did not have, but 30% of the games did have an FAQ. And so I felt a little bit better off of that set to say, yes, you want an FAQ. Have 2 or 3 questions in the FAQ. And I also think that's because video games lend themselves well to scanning an FAQ, right? What platform does it run on? Will it be DRM free? You know? Will the soundtrack be MP3s? You know, these kind of questions people have work well in the FAQ format.
I wonder if it's also the audience, like, is more kind of gets the concept of an FAQ.
Possibly,
like,
yeah.
Okay, here's where I need to go. It makes it's kind of jumps out when you're scanning.
So now I did a chart and I basically said, what if I took the ideal limits, what I just said? So the ideal overall project is $5,000 or less, between 8 and 34 days, has 2,000 characters, HTML characters in the description, and has 7 or more reward tiers. If that was your project, your success rate was actually 73%. So adhering to those things, you massively increase your chances of success. And same thing for video games. And there's a greater jump in video games. I have to say only 39 video games match the success criteria, but if your video game was less than $9,000, had more than 10 review criteria, had more than 4,000 characters description, had an FAQ, then you had a 69% chance of success versus 27% in the overall data set. So, you know, again, this is raw, you know, mathematic data, statistical predictions and that kind of stuff, right? So take that, you know, with large grains of salt and apply this intelligently to your own project. Don't ask for $8,000 if you can't execute your project for $8,000. Obviously, projects that ask for more than $8,000 succeeded. Statistically, your chances are lower, but I think honesty is more important.
Yeah.
And I also say in the articles that a good social media campaign around your project probably trumps every statistic value I have up here.
And I wonder, since gaming is probably, you know, it's hit the mainstream in gaming with things like Double Fine and you know, gotten out on social media, and you know, like we're covering Kickstarter. Other people in the games, you know, kind of arena are covering Kickstarter. If that's kind of like the external variable that is making everything, you know, so crazy, whereas the main numbers are a little more cut and dry.
Right. It's possible. So then what I did is I took those successful projects, those ideal projects, I took the successful ones of the ideal criteria and see how much did they end up at funding levels, and I bucketed it by how much they asked for. So if you asked for $5,000 and you met my successful criteria, you ended up at the 150% level. In fact, all of them for the overalls hovered around getting 150% of the funds they asked for. Okay? For video games, however, that number, for the most part, was 200% or better. There's a few funding levels, the 4,000 to the 4 to 5,000 level, and the 7 to 8,000 level were dips, but for the most part, we were looking at 200 to 250% of funding levels. So if you meet these criteria, you actually, for a video game, tend to go very far past your goal. You can't bank on that, but that's good to know. And I think that's what factors in there is once a project is successful, you kind of think this game is going to ship. And the question becomes, do I want to make this game happen, to do I want to buy this game when it comes out?
Yes.
And that gets a lot more people, success breeds success, and that goes on. Now, I had some fun with the video game project that I did not do on the main project. So I just did this for video games, but I did a chart of all the different reward buckets, right? I kind of tiered up the reward levels. Less than 5, 5 to 10, 10 to $14, $15 to $19, basically. I put them into price buckets. And then looked at the percentage of backers, of the total number of backers, the percentage of backers who back that level, average across all projects. And then I did the percentage of funds that came from that backing level against the total amount pledged. And I plotted these two on the same chart because I basically wanted to show this relationship that while you have a lot of backers at the lower tiers, a significant number of backers at the lower tiers, and it drops off as you get higher, especially once you cross the $200 mark, you really get very, very few backers at that mark. You still get a significant portion of funds. There's a lot of tiers still kicking in 5 and 8% of the funds, even when the number of backers has dropped below 1 and 2%. Right? And it's kind of obvious in retrospect to think that, but it's cool to see that charted out and the data support that yes, you get a lot of backers at the lower levels, but you will get some backers at the higher levels, and they will make up a significant chunk of your pledge amount. These angel investors, if you want to call them that. So I did that chart as well, just kind of reinforce that concept. And then I did throw out some of the things that you hear me say all the time when we do our Kickstarter projects on GameMarx. Open with gameplay. Show me 30 to 90 seconds of gameplay. Avoid programmer art. Get real art by whatever means necessary it takes to get real art for that concept, because I don't think most people will look at your game and go, oh, well, that's placeholder art. Obviously, it's going to look awesome when it's done.
Right.
I don't think that does well to a general audience. Then tell me the story of you. Why are you passionate about this game? Why do you have an indie game studio? Excuse me. You know, what else have you done? You know, what are your other successes in the game industry? You know, tell me your story. Because again, people talk more about Notch than they do Minecraft. And your potential to go viral is your ability to sell me your story, not their game idea. Your game idea is part of it, definitely, but I think your story is more important. Third point, don't talk about money. Right? I've said this before, too. Don't talk about money unless it helps your case. When you make a video game, all money pretty much goes to somebody's rent and food bill. That's the truth.
It's all it's mostly intangibles.
It's mostly this intangible money so I can quit my day job. And that is not a good story. That is not a story people like to hear. Right? No. They're like, oh, well, why don't you give me money so I can quit my day job and pursue my dream, you selfish bastard. Right? So they all have this envision of you just eating ramen, you know, month after month to get by and starve at any means necessary and live at the parents' house, you know. And so, but I break that rule if you do have something good to talk about the money use. Mostly this is hiring a contractor. So go out and get this well-known artist, this well-known musician. If I can raise these funds, I can get this contractor. And the game I'm gonna make anyway is gonna be even better because I have that artist or I have that musician. Okay? And you know, before you do that, approach these artists and musicians and kind of get them to commit so that you can state with certainty how much money that's going to be and what levels you need to hit with that. Clear description up front. I really want to see in your first 2 sentences of your first paragraph, what kind of game is it and what platforms does it run on? Don't bury that lead. Put that right up front, and while I'm talking about platforms, make sure you include Windows PC. I don't see many mobile, and I don't see many free-to-play games become successful, because free-to-play has the issue where, what am I really getting if I back a free-to-play game?
Yeah.
And mobile, how are you going to get it to my mobile device? You just can't sideload on my iPhone. It's not jailbroken. So, and then also you limited your audience, right? I may not have an iPhone or Android device or whatever you're supporting.
Especially if you're only supporting one or the other.
And, you know, there's been very, very big, you know, that Republic one. Projects nearly fail because they were a mobile app. In fact, Republic had to add Windows support to get successful. Next, I've said this several times, sell the game at $10, $25 is a collector's edition. Put in it a digital soundtrack or making a video or whatever you got to kick in to give reasons for your backers to chip in the extra bucks to get something out of $25. Only make the collector's edition digital goods. Do not put any physical goods. In fact, I recommend below $75. No t-shirts for less than $75. T-shirts cost you a shit ton of money.
A lot of
shipping.
money.
And the shipping's going to cost you a lot. People want the t-shirts. They demand the t-shirts. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting them at the $75 level and going like, hey, these are significant costs, and I'm trying to fund the game, not fund the t-shirt printing company. So if you want these, you can have them, but you're going to have to pay for them.
It is the point where you have to kind of break away from that. This is a pre-order model.
Yes.
And
no boobs. We've seen Kickstarters have backlash from the kind of sexism and type things like that. So, not that you can't have a game with sexy characters in it in Kickstarter. If you are overtly featuring the scantily clad women and things like that, that has actually gotten negative backlash reactions on Kickstarter. And once that starts, and a few blogs pick that up and run that story, it doesn't end well for you.
You're a bad guy.
You are the bad guy. You are what's wrong with gaming. Kickstarter is not the place to make a moral stand. You know, even if you're going to make a moral stand in defense of sexism
Or an
boobs,
immoral stand.
or an amoral stand, that's not the place. Not the place. You're trying to get funded. So if you have that, don't push that. Also, well, I'll get to that in a second. You are not Tim Schafer and you are not funny. That kills a Kickstarter more than anything. When people think they're funny and they're not, and it's painful, don't do it. Don't do it. You're not funny. Don't try to be funny. Avoid it. You know, I mean, if you want to try it, have independent test audiences verify that that is a interesting and attractive Kickstarter video. Because if it's not, you're gonna bomb. It's gonna kill your project more than anything. And then related to that, is don't have a girl or a model explain the Kickstarter and game who clearly has nothing to do with your game. Nothing screams scam than I'm a hired pretty face trying to get your money, right? The inauthenticity.
And where do you think your money is going towards?
Yeah. And what's the money going to? That just, that destroys all level of trust. And these models are horrible at reading the cue cards. And don't do it. Don't do it. Feature your team. And, if you have a female member of the team who is working on the project, but they are not the lead, but you choose to make them the lead in the videos because they're female and they're kind of, right? Be careful with that. Be authentic. Make sure she's on the project. I don't really have a problem with that per se, as long as you get the rest of the team in there. But man, if you're, using boobs to sell, that's going to say scam. That's going to say like, hey, what are you trying to do? You're trying to use sex sells for your Kickstarter. You guys are a scam, and avoid it.
I guess the thing to remember with Kickstarter is when you back something, you like that project is attached to you. So
yes,
you don't want to look like
in the article. All backers are public. So if you really push DAO 5, Dead or Arrival 5 clones, that's not one you can explain to the wife of like why you back that project. It's kind of like Playboy trying to get a rally to support censorship or something. Like, a good constituency of Playboy readers are married and spoken for men, and they aren't going to march for Playboy. They may read it, but they're not going to come out and just blatantly make a stand for you. So, keep that in mind. With all that, time for the Kickstarters. Only 6. In 2 weeks, I only found 6. And the first one kind of skates in on a technicality because it's the first Kickstarter to jump up and say, I am gonna run on the Ouya. And it is a digital pinball game that takes really long to get to the gameplay because they really kind of don't want you to know it's a digital pinball game, which is actually also coming out for Android and touch devices. So it's going to be a touch pinball game ported to a console. But the first one I saw out there saying, hey, back us because we're going to support the Ouya.
More power to you.
Next we have
that's bad.
Again, this one is not here on its own merits. Nadasha. The guy on the Kickstarter explains that you pronounce the dash. It is na-dash-a. Okay?
I want to hit him.
And this is your token racial stereotype game of the week on Kickstarter. Actually, these don't happen enough on Kickstarter to have one every week, I think. But the entire gameplay is a black woman in the quest for good Indian hair weave. And the entire video is a bunch of black women and husbands and talking about black women's hair and girl, do you know about getting your hair burned, and you have all that, and oh, girl, please, and all that. Like,
this has been a movie or 3.
Yeah, this is almost produced by Tyler Perry. Like, I think he gets a production credit, you know, executive producer.
If not him, Ice Cube for Barbershop does.
Yeah, yeah. This
is going to somebody else.
You know, pronouncing a dash is clever, but
no, it's not.
It's not that clever. Clever is not always good.
It just starts the slippery slope of what is like an actual like bad platformer. It looks like.
You know that I'm not gonna.
You were gonna go somewhere.
No, I was gonna say like it almost seems like from everything you've said, it's like almost. Yeah, it's doing race as a... Yeah, wrong. Sounds like...
Okay, so I do have one that's on here for its actual game idea and gameplay. This looked like... their production levels I'm not into on the video as much as I am on their gameplay aesthetic. And it looked like it was going to be this kind of haunted house, click and point adventure. But it's actually a hide and seek game. So it is kind of an arcadey type game. But the style of the gameplay, I think I got another video down here of the gameplay. Yeah, I'll just play that instead. The gameplay style, the artwork and the feel has a real awesome kind of creepy vibe to it, and so I mean it looks like they could do horror well, suspense horror and jump scares pretty well. And so basically like you're in the house and then the ghosts come at night and you kind of gotta like hide from and avoid the ghosts, in some kind of like bizarre click and point version of Pac-Man or something is going on. So I thought that looked pretty interesting and pretty novel. And you know, initially, like I said, it looked like a click and point adventure, but it's not that. It is this hide and seek gameplay mechanic. So the next one we have, this is not up here for legitimate reasons.
How many times have you said that?
Ursus, hey man, I would have only had like 2 Kickstarters if I didn't like comment on the spectacles. The Ursus is a PC video game coming to the X-Box 360. I'm calling out the dash because nobody writes it. Nowhere on here does he say Xbox Live Indie Games.
He just says X-Box.
He just says X-Box 360. It's almost as if this project doesn't realize what coming to the Xbox 360 means. And then also, down here, it says, $10 or more, you will get a copy of the game gifted to you on your X-Box 360. Now, I don't know about the X-Box 360, but on the Xbox 360, you can't gift shit. You will get 50 tokens and no more. And to have an unlimited pledge level of $10 to get the game. In fact, you know what? You can't even sell your game for $10. Your game's gonna be $1, dude. Maybe $5 and not sell any copies.
Crazy.
If you're crazy. But, yes. So, yeah, so there's your, it's not even an Xbox Live Indie game. It doesn't know it's an Xbox Live Indie game, Xbox Live Indie game of the week. Alright, this one got a lot of press. I don't know if they're making their mark. This one came out a little bit ago. And these are some guys with a serious studio, I guess. I don't think they actually ever show gameplay. But Shadowrun is like this D&D tabletop role-playing game. And like I guess it's been some computer games or something. Like maybe
actually there was
Sounds
Jordan. There was a Kickstarter. I think it was Jordan Wiseman who owns the rights to it.
There was another Shadowrun Kickstarter for like a PC Shadowrun game.
Right.
This is for a Shadowrun MMO, which asking for $500,000 for an MMO is ridiculous.
I had heard about that, and I kept it confused me because I'd heard people talking about the Kickstarter, and I was like, I backed the Shadowrun game. Is that an MMO? I didn't think it was.
No, they are different projects. I don't know what the overlap and collaboration is, if it's just a licensing deal, or if some of the creators on both. Seems to be a different studio, though, that is making it. If you're really into Shadowrun, you may be interested on this, but I don't know. I just see $500,000 MMO. Not going to happen. That's a joke. Whole bunch of t-shirts and hoodies being sold. Like, the only thing that's ever going to come out of this is going to be some miniatures. That's it. You know, this thing is going to dive and burn. Or it'll be one horrible ass free-to-play MMO Facebook game, because that's as far as they could get with $500,000.
I can't... I wonder how many people are like me and, like, this is kind of shooting themselves in the foot because there was already another Shadowrun Kickstarter.
Now, the last one we have up, it is new, but it wasn't up long. Its funding ends in like 62 hours. You got to jump on it. But this is an interesting case. So this is the limited edition, the Kickstarter for the limited edition of the game Space Chem. And Space Chem, it looks like this puzzle game. I don't know it. Like, maybe it's popular for mobile platforming. Like, I kind of looked at it, and it looked like this kind of like dragging, simplistic puzzle game. But it definitely had a built-in audience of people who liked it. And what they did is this Kickstarter basically said, like, hey, we're going to make a box version. We're going to print out our periodic table of elements for the game, put it on a disc. We're going to make a collector's edition. They only put 3 pledge levels, a $5 get a signed periodic elements postcard thing that they make, a $25 physical copy of the game, and $45 get 2 physical copies of the game, one to give away to a friend, right? So apparently they have the game up, they have forums, they have fans, they have a built-in audience, and they were like, yay, alright, we'll make you this collector's edition. They asked for $600, they are up to $5,000, you know? So that's kind of a real interesting way to raise money for your game studio, in that, like, hey, you gotta get the success out there. Like, Radiant Games comes to mind, okay? They're doing their own thing. Luke's out there doing his own thing, you know, building up his studio and doing all that. He's got this kind of indie cred with his other games that didn't have great commercial success, but they are diehard fans. And so, like, yes, here's the Radiant Collector's Edition pack. So it's not a Kickstarter to make a new game. I'm just going to figure out what it costs to physically manufacture this stuff, make it, and then charge a little bit more than it costs to make so that I can make a little bit money for the studio on there. That seems like a really cool idea I haven't seen tried on Kickstarter, and it worked well, because you're kind of leveraging your own fan base to help fund your next game without having to put all your next game out there and do that. And then also, the fans love this kind of stuff, you know? Like, if you have fans of the game, this is kind of cool. They don't install it, they just like to have it on their shelf. It gives them a social object, if you're a fan of Seth Godin. That is a social object, you know, it is a point of discussion. It is something that I can grab off the shelf and talk to and tell my friends your story around. You know, it prompts that conversation, and that's what you want to be making with that. So with all of that, that really kind of wraps us up. Either the chat locked up, or we just got no questions on any of the Kickstarter stats or stuff. I'll give a quick F5 to the chat room that sometimes updates it, sometimes not. You roll your dice as you take your chances. Let's see. Survey says, welcome to the chat room. I'm not even going to remember there were people in it at all. Maybe we lost everyone at some point and I locked up. No, they're there. They popped in. So I see all the names again, but there we are.
I saw.
And it's time for the good nights. So Smiler Toon, GA Tech Grad, Mock X Game, good night. Everyone else who watches the video version, thank you for watching, tuning in, downloading the podcast edition. Thank you. Once again, check out the show notes if you want to see all those charts and the deep Kickstarter data. Also, if you want the Kickstarter data, contact me. I will share the data with you. You can do your own analysis. This is not something I'm keeping for myself. I'm making it available to anyone who wants to play with this. And, I ask if you find some interesting analysis and play with some stuff, if you make a blog post and you share your analysis. Of course, you don't have to, but, just pay it forward, and go on. So, we will be back in a week.